Welcome to the Lost and Found podcast. I'm your host, Amanda. Join me each week as I rediscover my life's meaning, my passions, and my place in this world after leaving behind the only dream I've ever known. If you are dealing with self-loss, identity changes, career transitions, or you are still trying to figure out your life's purpose, then you're not alone. Join me. Wanderers are always welcome. To the Lost and Found podcast. This is your host, Amanda, and I'm so excited to have you here this week. We have the Olympic champion, Katie Hoff, on our show today. She was a two-time Olympian, three-time Olympic medalist, a world record holder, and has been previously called the female Michael Phelps. But beyond all of those titles, Katie has weathered both the exhilarating highs of performance and the devastating lows of injury and health challenges. And today, she's going to channel all of those lessons as an athlete, a businesswoman, a speaker, a writer, and a podcaster to tell us about how she empowers others to pursue their own extraordinary goals and live a life of honesty and resilience. So, Katie, I'm so honored to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Glad that we were able to meet up. Your husband was so nice when I interviewed him last month, and everybody has been loving his episode. So I knew if you're as cool as he is, if not more, everybody's going to have such a great time with this. So I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah, no, this is great. I've watched some of his episode and he always does a great job, but we are pretty competitive. So
so he'll be like,
yeah, hopefully my episode's
well,
yeah.
I know. Yeah, it'll be fun to see what happens. It'll be good. But he was great, and I thought about you and your story because you've had such an amazing trajectory. Starting out being so young and going straight into the Olympics, and you had this crazy high at that early of an age, and then you had to kind of transition out and come up with a new identity after leaving athletics, and that's a really difficult thing to do. And I am definitely not an Olympic athlete, but I remember going through similar feelings, like leaving high school sports and then leaving college sports and like trying to let go of who I used to be when I was just a player. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's more out of life than just that. And so I was so excited to be able to talk to you about, how you've transitioned and created a whole new world for yourself and an identity as Katie. So this will be so much fun. All right. So looking back on that first moment, that first Olympics back in 2004, you were only 15 years old. What do you remember most vividly about stepping onto that stage for the first time, and how did you feel to take that in?
Terrifying is probably the word I'd put to it. I think, my story is so interesting because I had such like you said, a steep incline up. It went from not ever being out of the country, never being on the national team, and in 1 year I dropped 10 seconds in the 400 IM. And for people who don't know swimming, that's like a large amount of time, and ended up going to the Olympic trials. Really just the year out, my goal was I just want to make the finals of Olympic trials and just get the experience. So in 2008, I can go and, make the Olympic team. And that was the thought and the plan. And I ended up winning both my events in 2004 at the trials. So making the team in the 200 IM and the 400 IM, and just felt such a strong dose of imposter syndrome to the moon. And I was so ill-equipped now looking back in 2004 to be an Olympian. I was on the team with all these people that I'd had their poster on my wall the year before. So imagine
you're meeting all your idols.
Yeah, you're meeting your idols. You're on the same team with your idols, and now you're supposed to go represent your country and win medals and bring home hardware. And I had a really rocky first Olympics because I just didn't have the confidence formed. Even though I was doing insane sets, insane training, I didn't really understand how to then lean on my training for my massive source of confidence. And that's what I, moving forward, figured out is like my training is everything. It's what I lean on when I'm feeling or terror. It's how I punch back, but I didn't learn that yet.
I can only imagine when you're a teenager, you're already having so many things happen. If you're in school, you're trying to keep your grades at a certain level. You're trying to make your parents happy or see your friends or have like what deems to be a normal life. And now you come back after that event. How do you go back to feeling normal or like living a normal life? Or did you not? Did you go straight into training all the way through?
Yeah, no, I really didn't. I don't ever feel like I ever had a normal life.
Yeah.
I think coming back, it was kind of a do or die situation. It was, am I gonna let this experience beat me and am I going to just quit swimming altogether, or am I going to let it fuel me and spark this redemption tour back to the next Olympics, or actually the next year we had world championships. And so I really took about a week to grieve and be upset. And then, which by the way, I look back, seventh in the world is not bad at
Not a
15
worse.
years old. But, you know, when you represent Team USA, the expectation is get on the medal stand or it's a failure. Like that is how it feels. That is the expectation. That is part of the pride of being a Team USA Olympian. And so for me, I just had this anger, but in the best way of like, no, I'm here to stay. I'm going to prove that I am worthy of being on Team USA. And we just got to work immediately. And I started building confidence in my training. I mean, meticulously building confidence in my training. Like when I say meticulous, I knew over the course of a 2-hour workout, down to the 10th of a second, the paces I was supposed to hold every single 50 meters. And we were doing 10,000 meters.
My gosh. Yeah, I would just float. I'd be like, you know what? I did what I could today. Yeah. So to have that kind of stamina and that drive, that's not only competitive, but it's very unique. Like I talked with Todd a little bit about, you know, the difference between like an athlete or somebody who's just performing and then like the elite level. And like you almost have to have a very separate mentality that anybody else has to make it to that. And like even then you kind of get tunnel vision sometimes on any other goals or any other things that are going on in your life because you're only focusing on the one thing. And it does make you the best, but sometimes it like blocks out other experiences you could be having.
Yeah, you know, I think people always ask me that question, like, oh my gosh, was it such sacrifice? You know, did you miss out on so much? And I always go back to like, no, because it's not, if what you're doing is fueling your cup so intensely and you're so passionate, not going to, you know, a friend's house one night or, you know, going to bed early and missing XYZ, it never felt like a sacrifice for me. And the times when it did later on in my career, when it did feel like a sacrifice, it was a trigger to, okay, I need to reevaluate because now that this is feeling like a sacrifice, maybe I'm not as passionate or maybe I haven't found my why again. But from, you know, age 15 to 20, nothing was, I loved it. It was my passion. It got me up in the morning. I was psyched to go to practice. And I believe that across all buckets of life, like if you're feeling that fulfilled, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice because you love it so much.
Right. The whole, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what got you into swimming originally? Are your parents swimmers or anybody else in your family an Olympic?
No, I mean, my mom was actually a third-time all-point scorer at Stanford in basketball. Zero of her hand-eye coordination. I got into it in summer league swimming, neighborhood team. This older kid I thought was so cool and he was doing it. And so I was like, I'll try it. And I actually really didn't get the competitive bug, and I say like until 9, which is still really young, but I didn't really understand that addiction until I would say 9. And then I remember kind of having this epiphany in practice of how to work hard, which I think is such a skill for young kids, of having that breakthrough moment of, okay, this is more painful. This kind of sucks, but like I'm excelling and I'm starting to beat people.
Getting better. Yeah.
Getting better. And as soon as I clicked with that moment, I became addicted to, I would say, the affirmation of everyone around me, which we can talk about, not the best, but I became addicted to the success within myself that kept happening. And I think that's a really rare moment at such a young age. And it was such a gift for me because I was like, this is the feeling I want every single day. So I was willing to put myself in a lot of physical discomfort to get that feeling.
Yeah. Sacrificing yourself to get to that level too, I'm sure was a very intense decision to make. And you're so young back then and you're kind of like, how did I put all that pressure on myself? But it led you to where you are today. So you do that in 2004, you decide you're going to come back in 2008. Walk us through what happened in 2008 and kind of what you were thinking while you were on that world stage too.
Yeah, I mean, the time from 2004 to 2008, people don't realize, but there are a ton of really big competitions. So the year after the Olympics, there's World Championships. The year before the Olympics, there's World Championships. So I really went on this redemption tour, broke my first American record at 16, turned pro, signed a 10-year deal with Speedo, Visa, Omega, and it then became my job. So, you know, to do that. So I had a sponsor that paid for college. And so that 3 years really primed me for 2008, although I feel like I always up the ante on myself. So 2004, it was like, just make the team, get on the podium. I started, swimming a million events, breaking world records, and obviously a lot of comparisons then were drawn to Michael Phelps, which, if you remember in 2008, he was trying to break the record and win 8 gold medals.
Yes.
I didn't have a gold medal yet.
Yeah.
And so my goal in 2008 was just come in. I was swimming 5 individuals and, win gold medals for Team USA. And I actually had an incredible Olympics. I was coming in as the world record holder, American records in 3 other events, and ended up winning 3 medals, broke an American record there. And now looking back, swam really, really well. It just was unfortunate that at the time I was being compared to the greatest Olympian of all time.
Pressure, right. Yeah.
I think that was really what kind of put a bad taste in my mouth towards 2008, because I would literally come out of the water, win a medal for my country, and the media would ask, "Are you happy?" And so I think that has taken me probably 10 years to reconcile of, oh, wow, I won medals for my country. I'm still the American record holder 17 years later in the 400 IM. It just really taught me a lesson in expectations of myself, expectations from others, and how to juggle that.
And how to reconcile between the two, like which ones to keep or not. Yeah. Oh, and I added that question in there because I had listened to one of your episodes with your friend on the Unfiltered waters, and you guys brought that up about how you would both be called different names, or people would refer to you as your male counterparts rather than you, Katie, the swimmer.
Yes.
You, Katie, the world record breaker. Like you, Katie, the powerful teammate that's been added to this opportunity. How did it feel to have that kind of pressure put on you and to not be recognized for your own accomplishments as they were happening in, like, just for you? You didn't have to be being compared to somebody else like that.
I think I was definitely being recognized for my accomplishments. I just think it was just almost too easy for the media to draw comparisons specifically to me, because we both were training in Baltimore. We both signed these long-term deals with Speedo. We both swam, to this day. I think there's one other besides myself and Michael that swam 5 individual events at the Olympics. So it was just like served on a plate to the media to make these comparisons. And so I don't blame anyone for making them. I think I'm only 19 years old. It was really difficult to separate myself from that and understand that my expectations can be different, and understand that what I did was still an incredible feat. But when you're 19 years old and the media is buzzing and you're swimming for 9 days straight, it's very difficult to not go down into a spiral. And I left those games just devastated, honestly.
I can only imagine the struggle of trying to create your own identity through that experience, but if you're constantly being compared to someone else, did it ever feel like part of you was getting blended in with him?
Really, I think it was more, the goal is a bunch of gold medals, and regardless if he was there or not, it was more just like that set the foundation of the expectations. But I always felt like I was my own person, and I was recognized for Katie Hoff, the swimmer. I think that was just the time, and it was just an easy comparison. I always say I'm very grateful, or I guess I'm very complimented for that comparison, because obviously I'm doing something right if I'm being compared to the greatest Olympian of all time. But like any compliment, there's a positive and a negative to it.
What was your process leading up into 2012? Because that would have been the next one that you prepared for. Is that correct?
Yeah, so 2012, yes, I did win gold in 2008, and that was, I think, was the thing that was still fueling me. As a swimmer, you look at the list of accomplishments, it's break an American record, break a world record, win a world championship gold medal, and win a gold medal. That's kind of like the full spread of what you want to do. And so that was the thing that I didn't have. And so I think if I look back on it, I should have taken more time to just process. But in swimming, I think nowadays it's a bit more common, but it's like you don't want to be out of the water longer than a week. You have to keep the feel for the water.
You can't take a break, yeah.
Take a break. And so I needed to do some healing. I needed to do some therapy. I needed to understand my why again for the sport, my love for the sport. And I didn't really take that time. And so I ended up getting really sick at the trials in 2012. But it's also how I met my husband and how our relationship formed. After 2012, I was like, I'm done. I'm done with the sport. I don't have the same, everything felt like sacrifice at that point. Right. And so I really stepped away after 2012 thinking that I was done forever.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and that must have been so devastating too to slowly start to see your life as an athlete
Hmm.
transition away, and it almost not by choice, right? Because you were physically
Yeah.
impaired and could not continue. So to have that decision taken away from you, like, how did that feel?
I mean, it was again terrifying because it's all I knew, right? And I think at this point I could have kept going, right? It wasn't anything physical, but I just didn't have the will. Like I didn't even want to smell chlorine. I just didn't have the will to put in the 30 hours a week and the intensity and all that comes along with being a professional athlete. And so I ended up stepping away from the sport for a couple of years and really gained some perspective outside as a not say a normal person, but kind of. And so at that point, I went to school in Miami. I was enjoying being a fiance, and I felt this pull back to the water of, man, maybe now with some maturity, some more wisdom, maybe I can go for my third Olympic team and have
Gotcha, okay.
more.
That's where I'm messing up the timeline there.
Yeah, so and have more just love and ownership over my training. And I found an incredible coach in Miami who he and I just would bounce ideas off each other, and it was beautiful. And that's usually when life throws curveballs, when everything's going super.
You're like, "This is great. I love this, I'm gonna follow my intuition and it'll totally make sense now." And then you're like,
Exactly.
"Dang, did I read the signs wrong?"
Yeah. And so that's ended up being about a year and a half before 2016 when I got my pulmonary embolism in my lung. And that was really, really probably one of the most painful experiences of my life, as well as the most confusing, because I really had been very fortunate in my career where I really didn't have any injuries. So it was my first time experiencing something that was vastly out of my control. And I felt like a crazy person because it took me about 7 weeks to get a diagnosis for the pulmonary embolism.
Oh my gosh, and is that because you waited or the doctors just couldn't figure it out?
They could not figure it out.
Oh,
Yeah, so I do a lot of advocacy work now because young people are typically misdiagnosed. They just don't view it as a younger person's condition. And so, yeah, I mean, the pain was so great, I passed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And if you had passed out in the water, you could have drowned or something like that if you had pushed through. Because I'm sure people they love to tell women that our pain is all in our heads, or they'll be like, "Oh, you'll be all right. Just take a break or sit down for a minute and then try again," or something like that. Like it could have been really dangerous for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pain was, I couldn't even swim.
Yeah.
That's how intense it was. So I thought it was like an intercostal strain. And then I'm thinking like, well, I feel like I pushed past strains before, but it ended up being, I now found out like I could have died on the plane ride back it was in California to Miami. And then 7 weeks of doctor after doctor being like, you look really healthy. And finally advocated for myself and pushed through and got the diagnosis, which is basically 2 blood clots in the bottom of my right lung.
Oh my gosh. So while you're taking the time off from that and you've stepped away and you've officially decided, all right, I'm done with this. I'm not going to swim again. When did you decide to start writing your book? You wrote Blueprints, right?
Yeah, Blueprint.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up, 2016, I was essentially, or 2015, I essentially had to decide to retire just because the scar tissue buildup in my lung was just too much. And then at that point, went into a very confusing transition of people hear this all the time, of just your whole world is ripped away from you. And I, again, just pushed through. I didn't really take the time to process. And so I actually took a complete break from the sport. I didn't do clinics. I didn't do speaking. I was like, I'm going to start over and be in the corporate world and just be fulfilled and make my own way that way. That lasted about 4 years, probably the most miserable 4 years of my life. And then in 2019, I was asked to do a TED Talk, which really was the first time I was really honest about my career and my emotions. And then a year later, in 2020, I decided to write my book.
Yeah. How did you feel after you did the TED Talk and you were honest with the audience, a room full of strangers, right? And a lot of people maybe weren't familiar with Olympic trials or any of the process. Like, how did it feel to share that story?
Yeah, I mean, really, I got up there. So the TED Talk is about being relentless. And it was the first time that I had been honest that I didn't like my Olympic medals for a really long time. And for the longest time, I thought that when I was talking in front of a group of people, I had to always be positive. I couldn't, share the downs. I couldn't share the negative because that just wasn't going to be relatable. turns out the negative and the downs are the most relatable because everyone goes through tough times and struggles. And so I got a standing ovation, and it was the most validating experience of my life, because I was like, okay, that's why this really crappy stuff happened to me. I have the strength to stand up and share my story, and hopefully that's going to help others to feel empowered and feel triumph during the tough times. And so it really was this turning point of, okay, this is my next step. This is my calling. This is what I can do to help others.
Yeah. And how are things going with you and Todd? I know it's really difficult to go through something alone, or you feel like you are, and
Yeah.
especially a major transition like that, leaving, being an elite athlete to just corporate girly. Yeah. How did it go having him work through that with you? It was good to have the support system there, or did you guys kind of trade off? Like you were having a rough time, then you would help him, and vice versa. How did it go having him as your teammate working through all of that together? I'm sure it was terrifying for him to watch his wife
Yeah.
be so sad.
Yeah, I feel like we did do that. We really traded off. And I think this is the mark of a really good partnership marriage is, he would be having his tough time, and it was kind of like, okay, now I have to be the rock and the solid.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then I would go through my tough times. At one point we joked, we're like, can we just sync up? Both have good at the same time and both have bad at the same
Yeah.
time, but it just doesn't work like that. And so he, being an elite athlete himself, I feel like was extremely helpful because he knew exactly what to say. He knew when to interject. He knew, I think a lot of people, when they see someone going through a hard time, they want to say, oh, it's okay. They want to fix it. And a lot of times that's very devalidating and very frustrating. And so he always, I felt like, truly saw me and truly understood me and knew what to say and when to say it.
That means the world too. At the end of the day, you can trust somebody with your story.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody saw probably as close to the raw emotions or feelings and
Definitely.
things that you were dealing with than him.
Yep.
So it means the world to have a partner like that. So I'm so happy for both of you to have found each other. And you met originally like through mutual friends, or in Florida, or up in Michigan where
We met in Naples, so he was training for his pro day and combine stuff in 2012, and I was training for the trials in 2012, and we had the same trainer.
That's cool. Do you guys do any athletic? Obviously, you don't play pro sports anymore, but do you do competitive athletics together in anything else these days?
No, I mean, people always ask me, like, do you do triathlons? Do you do this, do that? I think it's really difficult when your high is competing in the Olympics to find a parallel high in anything else.
Sure. I can't imagine something more than that.
No. And so it's really like, it has to be really, really, really worth it for me to put myself through physical pain again.
Yeah.
It has to be worth it. So I think he and I are similar in that way, is we'll do some workouts together, but we've done marathons together, but there's nothing that really lights it up for us. So we focus more on like the entrepreneurial side and the business side to get that light up again.
Yeah, and you guys started Synergy Dryland together, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that. There are a lot of Nashville listeners for the show. So, and is that business that's based here, correct? Or
no. So it's kind of funny how Synergy started. So back in 2020, when, everybody was quarantined, but swimmers weren't able to obviously go. And every athletic team, went through this. And so I actually started doing these virtual, just kind of kick my own butt. It's called Dryland in swimming, it's basically just strength and conditioning. And so I would get thousands of kids to get online and do a virtual 60-minute sweat fest, essentially. Sure. And it became really popular because my whole thing was, there's nothing that I can say in this moment to make these kids feel better about what's happening. Let's do something about it. Let's stay strong. Let's stay conditioned. And so once the kids transitioned back to the pool, it made more sense to work in alignment with their team and with their coaches. And so we're essentially a consultant to teams all over the nation, mainly high school teams. And swimming is really the only sport where there isn't a separate strength coach and swim coach.
Interesting.
Like in football or basketball, they have a strength coach.
All the specialty coaches, yeah.
So it's really unfair to these coaches for them to be an expert on land and an expert in the pool. And so we have an app. We have coaching calls with the coaches to help them execute the workouts. And so, we have teams in Miami, we have teams in New Jersey, we have teams all over. And so it was really cool to have this venture together, because Todd trained me at the end of my career. So he really took a, no pun intended, dive into the sport of how to train swimmers specifically. It's the only sport where gravity is not a factor. So you have to
Think about that very strategically.
yeah, it really makes a difference in the type of work you're doing. And so it was kind of my first itch into scratching an itch in entrepreneurial ventures, because I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the only thing we do, but it's definitely something that we love to continue and will continue forever, because it's just fun to be involved in the sport in a totally different way.
Yeah, and, do you guys incorporate a lot of his recovery studies and stuff as well? Do you talk to the coaches about that? Like, yes, you need to do the workouts and you need to do the weightlifting when they're not in the pool, but the recovery part must be super crucial as well.
Definitely. I mean, the reason we called it synergy was that you can't, like you said, be really good in the pool and neglect all the other things. There has to be synergy among sleep and nutrition and, soft tissue work and all those things. And so, yeah, he'll give talks to the kids, talks to the parents surrounding sleep, surrounding nutrition. So that's definitely something that is incorporated into the programming.
How does it go for you guys working together? Is it difficult to be partners with your husband in the business, or do you guys feel like you are a team and it kind of goes smoothly?
It can be, I think, because we have such different strengths. Like, I'm more of an operator. He's more of the brains behind the programming. I think I'm definitely more type A than him. So sometimes I'm like, let's finish this now. But for the most part, I think we're a really good team. We have complementing strengths. And so it's been cool to see kind of as our life has evolved. We started when we lived in Michigan and during COVID, how it's really brought a lot of just fulfillment to our lives when it comes to building this business together.
Yeah, what would you say you've learned about yourself through the process of becoming an entrepreneur? Because it's still a relatively young business, like you said, if it started in 2020.
Yeah.
What would you say you've learned the most about who you are?
I think I always thought, because swimming is the athlete is coach, they do whatever the coach says, that I'm way more of an entrepreneurial mind than I thought.
Yeah.
I can be creative, I can come up with ideas. Then that's really shown true within the podcast. The podcast that we have, it is a business, it is a venture. And so I've kind of surprised myself in how creative I can be in creating, really good ideas to help drive things forward.
Katie, you have your own podcast as well called Unfiltered Waters. Tell us a little bit more about your show, what encouraged you to start it, and who is your audience, and what do you talk about on there?
Yeah, so we started, I have a co-host as well. She's fellow Olympian, Missy Franklin. And I basically reached out to her to start the podcast. Let's see, it was July of 2023. And I had come back from this crazy intensive, so just like a week-long intensive therapy called the Hoffman process. And yeah, it's probably one of the hardest weeks of my life. It's like an excruciatingly beautiful experience, I like to say. And at that point, I was still pretty hands-off within the sport of swimming. I mean, we had synergy, but I wasn't full-fledged into the sport as I was obviously prior to retiring. And I don't know what came up inside of me, but I was like, I feel like there isn't a female-led podcast within not only the sport of swimming, but just professional sports in general. Our core is swimming because we're swimmers, but we've interviewed Lindsey Vonn and Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. The goal is by LA 28, we have all athletes that come on, and we're the next stop after the Today Show. Like, that is the goal.
Can't wait for you to interview Alona Mar. Like, I think that'd be the coolest episode.
We are emailing with her agent, so it's happening.
Trying to find the one, and I was like, oh, she's not on here yet. Like, maybe
Not yet.
Maybe next season, next Olympics, that'd be super cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Lona is awesome. But I think, when I asked Missy, I was like, do you want to do this podcast? I had no idea where we were going, what the show was going to be about, what our voice was going to be, and how we were going to put it out. But the one thing we knew is that we wanted it to be more about the person beneath the athlete. And so many interviews she's done, so many interviews I've done, is just, there's such an agenda. They always want to talk about the races. And yes, we talk about races and we talk about medals, but a lot of it is just trying to show the person's personality. And that's really why we wanted to make sure we had very high quality cameras, awesome clips, because especially within the sport of swimming, I just feel like from a brand perspective and a partnership perspective, these brands want to get to know the person. Like, that's what connects them to the audience. And so being able to showcase these athletes on the human side has really been the goal from the start. And the payoff to me that I was not expecting was just how many more relationships I built with this generation. I'm 36 years old. I haven't competed since 2008 Olympics. And so getting to know these people, these athletes, has allowed my excitement for the sport to ignite way more than I could have expected. And so that has just been a blast. And yeah, I mean, from start to finish, it's, uploading things, getting sponsors, ad reads. We've done a lot of stuff on the road, figuring that out.
Right.
So there's always something new and always something that makes me feel like I'm an idiot, but
No,
I love it so much.
you're definitely not, because I feel that way too, and I've been working on it almost as long as you have, and it's a great learning curve. It's a learning curve I really enjoy, because it's a good challenge to do something unique and fun like that, and then it expands your mind every single episode, because you're meeting other athletes a lot of the times, but you're learning something from them too that you maybe didn't think that you would, or you wouldn't have connected on. You're like, oh, we actually have that also in common, not just being athletes together.
Well, I think that's the hypothesis we had, but it's not always that your hypothesis and the reality line up. And it's been really cool that these athletes will open up to us way more and get way more vulnerable, because we have been there. We understand from a very, very deep level what they're feeling, the emotions, the pressures, and so the sacrifice. And so I think that was my hope, is that I'm more apt to open up to someone who's been there. And they say it all the time. They're like, you've been there, you get it, and we're like, yes, we do. So our questions are much deeper, I would say. And I feel like we can ask the maybe scarier questions, vulnerable questions, because we're coming from a place of heart and soul of, hey, I'm asking this because I know, and it's really difficult.
By interacting with your guests and having them open up like that, what has your show taught you about vulnerability?
I think that I think this is just more of a journey in my own mental health, but I think I always thought that I was a really vulnerable person. And until recently, I think I've been very vulnerable when I'm feeling happy and in a good spot. But I think I'm really bad at being vulnerable when I'm in a spot where I don't want to be as friendly, or I just want to be by myself. And so I think it's really taught me it's okay to just be authentic and be like, I'm not in the best mood, but I want to be around you right now. I think that is, instead of running and hiding, I think I've realized that people just want the authentic you. Obviously not like a rude person.
Right,
But just showing like your true colors can be embraced. And similar to what I learned about the TED Talk is you can show maybe the uglier or the vulnerable sides of yourself, and you can still be accepted and embraced.
And that it feels terrifying to do it, but after you're done, the relief is insane. And that's really good. And I've definitely had to work on that a lot on this show too. The first few episodes are definitely harder than to go back and listen to, because I'm like in such a dark kind of place, like explaining like this is how I felt. And when I left my career, like I didn't realize I had so much wrapped up in that identity, and like letting go of that old version of myself felt like she had died. Like I had like almost like I was breaking up with a person that I thought was supposed to be there forever. And now that she's gone, what am I supposed to do? Who do I mold? Where do I go? And that's such a hard thing to reconcile with. But I think that that's amazing that you've offered or created a platform that has such a safe space for those people to come on the show and share that. And I'm sure it helps you grow as well, hearing their story too.
Definitely. Yeah. There's so many, and not every time, but there's definitely interviews where I'm like,
Walk away from one. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like that. I just feel seen and validated. And I just truly love the art of trying to ask questions that make someone feel safe, but also brings out their message that much better, and I've had people do that for me. And so being able to, I always say, like, I want there to be full circle moments. Like whenever something hard happens, or, you go through a breakup, whether it's with a human or with your career, having it come back around to make full sense is always what makes me just feel at peace in life.
Yeah, I like that. Do you talk about your own standards that you hold? And I know you've mentioned maybe in the past about like you have your own Olympic standards that you pursue in your life. Like what are those standards that you now have, now that you're away from that previous life and career? How do you still uphold that expectation for yourself in your current day-to-day? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the Olympic standards came from me really struggling to share my Olympic career and journey with people present day. Like I'll go and talk to a company or a group of people, and I'm talking about something that happened when I was 17 years old. And I started to feel really, it sounds crazy, but I'm like, well, I broke a world record when I was 17. I'm 36.
Right.
Like, what else? What else have I done? Like, I would literally ask myself that question. And I finally got to a point where I was like, okay, I just need to go back and figure out what made me great. Because when you make the Olympic team at 15, you're just acting off of instinct. You're doing what your coaches tell you. You don't sit there and go, what qualities about me make me an Olympic athlete, right?
What
You're
did
just
they see that I couldn't see or something? Yeah.
you just know, like, what did I have that I didn't even know I had? And so when I retired, it forced me to look back and go, well, how can I not recreate, because you're never going to recreate the feeling of being an Olympian, but how can I utilize all of these qualities that I developed and skill sets and standards that I developed as an Olympian now into the next chapter of my life? And so I really have realized that, simple things like, understanding, I always call it the I'm due mentality. Todd and I say it to each other all the time. Like, I'm due, if something bad happens multiple times in a row, right? You get that kind of that mentality of like, oh, can I catch a break, right? And we flipped it to, no, I'm due. Because it is physically and scientifically impossible to just have bad things happen for the rest of your life. It just, to me, means if 17 bad things happen, on number 18, you're due for goodness. And so I learned that back in 2004 from an Olympic teammate. And it took me until after my career, oh, like I was doing that throughout my entire career, and just having this belief that I am going to find goodness. And if I don't give up and I don't stop right before the breakthrough, I'm going to succeed. And I think that has been probably, of all the standards that I've really implemented in my life, the I'm due mentality is number one, because I genuinely believe people stop right before the breakthrough. They're like so close. Yeah. And if they just stuck it out one more day or made one more call or pushed just 10 more seconds, the breakthrough's right there. And so it kind of takes the pressure off if you're just like, oh, another bad thing happened. Well, that just means I'm due. Tons of flight trouble on our way back from Vegas 2 days ago. Todd and I were like, we're due. We're freaking due, So,
well, and especially because you guys went for the Backstreet Boys concert,
we did.
right? Oh my gosh.
So fun.
I've had so many friends go there over the last couple of months, and everything that they post about it, it looks so fun. It's so nostalgic, but like silly and awesome.
Yes, it was electric.
Concert. Yeah, that's cool. And I'm so sorry about your flight though. That sucks. Yeah.
We're due.
You're due for a good one. Can you tell me, maybe for the listeners who might be, if they're on a verge of a breakthrough and they don't realize it, right? Because they're sitting they're in the suck, they're in the really hard kind of time. Do you have an example of a recent moment where you were worried the breakthrough wouldn't happen and then it did? Like, how did you work through that?
Yeah, I think number one is realizing that you can't skip steps. I think, and that's the most frustrating thing to say when you're in the suck, because you're like, of course I'm not going to skip steps, but like when you look back on it, faster, right? And I think it's the not skipping steps piece is just putting one foot in front of the other. It's like moving forward, so for example, we got to go NCAA's this past year, and I wasn't sure if we were going to pull it off with the podcast, do our first ever live show, get the sponsors, get the equipment there, set up. It was such a big mountain to climb, and I was freaking out and beginning to spiral because I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off. And so I basically broke it down into more digestible things of like, okay, so if we have 5 different buckets that we need to accomplish, today I'm going to make one call here. I'm going to send this email. I'm going to start slowly checking off the boxes. And I think that's how I've approached every quad as well in swimming, right? Like if I started 2004 and I was like, oh my God, I have 4 years, I would want to curl up into a ball and die.
That feels crushing. You're like, oh my God, it's so far away, and yet it's not. The 4 years are going to fly by. How do I possibly?
It's paralyzing. It's very paralyzing. And so I think when it comes to, when you're just in the thick of it, similarly, you're like, oh my God, I can't even like see over the other side of the mountain. How in the world am I going to do this? It's just breaking it down into digestible things. Like, okay, one foot in front of the other today means I call my agent or I reach out to cold call this company and pitch my podcast and see if they'd be interested, right? And once you start getting those little mini wins, you start getting momentum and you start getting confidence, and like that feeling is addicting. But if you just sit there on the couch and you kind of get stuck, you don't start to form that snowball effect where it starts rolling and then you get excited and the excitement turns into a win. And so it's, I mean, acknowledging that it's the hardest thing in the world, but just like take those first little baby steps, get up, and I promise you'll get out of it. The problem is there's no guarantee on the timeline, but you will get out of it eventually.
Well, and then there's no guarantee that it'll ever work out, but if it's something I feel like that's on your heart or it's been on your mind, like you've always wanted to do this thing, or you've always wanted to start that company, or you've always wanted to create whatever that item is, just start the first one. You don't have to be good the very first time.
Yeah.
I've learned like just getting it out of your brain helps you like get the rest of it going, because you're kind of, if you get the first thing off the ground, you're like, oh, all right, that wasn't so bad. I can keep moving. Oh.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is something I always tell people is the worst that happens is you bulletproof yourself to failure, right? If you start, and let's say you start a podcast and it implodes and you suck, and you'll get back up, right? You'll lean on your people and you'll look back and you go, okay, I'm pretty much indestructible. Like that's what 2004 did for me. I threw up in front of millions of people at my first Olympics. I failed at my first Olympics. And I got back up. And so after that, I felt kind of bulletproofed to failure, because I'm like, well, if that can't knock me down, nothing can knock me down. So you're able to then move through and navigate life without this fear of failure. And so there's really no bad side of it. You either fail and then you bulletproof yourself, or you succeed and you get all your dreams to come true.
Yeah, and then your life is amazing.
Yeah.
Which is what we hope for you, of course. Yeah. Did you ever deal with, I know for me growing up, dealt with a lot of like trying to be perfect all the time, and I wanted like I wouldn't finish a project or I wouldn't share it with people unless I thought it was exactly right. Like have you ever dealt with that in your personal life or your current projects, and like how do you kind of get over worrying about too much of like what other people might think of what you're doing or how well it looks?
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up, because I think I've always said I'm not a perfectionist to the true definition in what you just described. Like I don't really care about if the dinner looks perfect or the presentation doesn't have like if there's a typo, there's a typo. Like if the image isn't great, it's fine. You know, I think for me, I get laser focused, psychotic, and driven when it comes to if it affects the journey to accomplishing the goal. So for example, if I'm in the pool and I have 10 repeats and I want to hit them to the 100th of a second and I don't, then I'm beating myself up about it and upset. But I think when it comes to perfectionism as a whole, I don't know if I have that. I think I just have a neuroses obsession with accomplishing a goal, and I will do anything it takes to accomplish that. But I don't know, because recently my therapist was like, yeah, but there's different types of perfectionism. You know that, right? And I was like,
I thought it was just what we just talked about.
I know.
Well, like, great. I need to go back to therapy then, because I probably have a lot more to work through if it's different types like that.
Well, that's what she was, because I was like, oh, look, I'm not a perfectionist because, you know, I don't feel like, I'd always heard that a perfectionist is, it transcends across every bucket of your life. Everything has to look perfect and be perfect. And she was like, no, it can be more of how you want other people's opinion of you to be perfect. Like you want other people to think that you're doing X, Y, Z. And I was like, that's interesting, because I very much consider myself an affirmation addict. And so that could be a form of perfectionism that I haven't even delved into. So stay tuned on that.
I have a lot to dive into as well. You're giving me a lot of introspection right now, which is good. That's what the whole point of the show is for, to help me crack that nut. Well, if you're an affirmation addict, what are some of your favorite affirmations right now? Or do you have a mantra that you live by? Like I'm due obviously is one you share with your husband. But do you, Katie, have a mantra or an affirmation you say?
So by affirmation, I mean affirmation of other people telling me I'm awesome and good job. And so it's actually really bad to be an affirmation addict. Like I think that a lot of people who are performers, and when I say performers, like athletes are performers, I think that it's very easy to be swept up in, I'm swimming this race, and I've done this since very little because I want people to come up and be like, oh my gosh, that was such a great swim. You're amazing. And so it can be very difficult when you're living your life for that outcome, because guess what happens when you don't swim a really fast race, or you don't perform how you want, you don't get that affirmation, or you post something on social media and it doesn't get the likes that you're expecting, right? I think social media has just heightened affirmation addicts, but I feel like I'm a recovering affirmation addict, but I think it's a concept that I really developed because I think it's what, when I've really struggled in my life or struggled in transition, it's the thing that I craved and didn't get. And so it's something to watch out for, of kind of, is that fueling you? Is the want for affirmation fueling you, or is the goal and the fulfillment fueling you?
In and of itself, not whether or not anybody sees you. If nobody saw you accomplish the goal, but you still accomplished it, are you going to be happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a tough question.
Yes, very tough question. Or like sometimes you accomplish a goal. I know I've done this in the past where I've set a standard or something and I meet it, but if it didn't make me happy, then I'm wondering, is that a goal that I actually set for myself, or was that a goal that someone else expected me to hit? And once I hit it, it didn't feel like even it was mine, right?
Yep.
So like you get to the mountaintop and you're like, I don't know if I like the view up here. Like this isn't what I thought it would be like.
Exactly.
So that's also really hard to reconcile too.
Very hard.
How would you say your relationship with success and failure has changed over time, from being a really young athlete now to, you're, as you say, you're in your mid-30s, you're married, your life is completely different. What was success like and failure like back then versus success and failure now?
I think back then it was very, very heightened because it was so public. Being in the public eye when you win is the best thing ever. And it, I think, fuels now the struggle after, because now, like, you're never going to be as watched as you were in a professional sense, Olympic sense. And I think similarly, failure is heightened because everyone has an opinion, everyone's watching it. I think now success is actually harder than the failure is, because you have success and not everyone's watching. Not everyone cares. And so you really have to make sure, I really have to make sure that, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for my fulfillment? Am I doing this because I'm going to be proud? Or am I doing this because I want other people's congratulations and affirmation? And I actually ask myself before I do anything at this point now, because life is short, and why get to the top of the mountain, waste all this time and effort, and be doing it for the wrong reasons. It's just such a sad thought. And then I would say the failure is almost easier because, one, I've been through some really big failures in my life, so everything else just feels like just a little mini speed bump at this point, and less people are watching. So I feel like it's something I can kind of more personally reconcile with my close friends and support system, and it's not as, I guess, traumatic.
Yeah. Would you say it, obviously not having the same amount of eyes on you changes things for maybe some opportunities, right? Like you said, you're cold calling sponsors sometimes, or you're putting yourself out there to like explain like, oh yeah, I'm a former Olympian, or I did all these things, or if people don't know who you are, so like that shifts and stuff. But like, do you think it actually could give you more freedom to be exactly who you are, because not everybody's watching you all the time? You're not under the scrutiny level that you were. The pressure's not quite there anymore. Do you feel like you can live a more authentic, free life as Katie?
Good question. I mean, I think when the spotlight was on me the most, I wasn't a fully formed human yet. I mean, 15 years old, you're not even, your brain's not even fully developed.
Yeah.
I think nowadays, especially with the podcast and like we're really putting it out there, I think I for the most part can be the most authentic version of myself, even if it is, if some of our podcasts, there's tens of 20s of thousands of people who see it.
Right.
And that actually more excites me, because I feel like it's like, oh, I can share truly my authentic self as a now fully formed adult. And so I feel like I'm able to explain things better, and I'm able to share my perspective on my story better. And I just feel like I have more of a true picture of my story in the past and current. And so, yeah, I think at this point in my life, I've embraced who I am and what I'm about and what fuels me. And I still have my days, but I think the picture is much clearer.
Sure. And how has it felt to build a community like that? Because it probably is a bit more intimate, right? If it is the if we're focusing like on the podcast per se, not necessarily all the social media people that follow you as well, but like those are pretty much like the core people. Those are the core listeners. Those are the people that are following you and Missy's journey through the whole show. Like, how does it feel to interact with that community and build that up and keep that growing and interact with them?
Oh, it's so fulfilling. I think, the goal of obviously going to LA Olympics and having athletes win medals and come to us just feels like such an honor and responsibility at the same time. But going to a swim meet, like we were at World Championship trials a couple months ago, and having people come up to me more because of the podcast than what I've accomplished in my swim career feels like the coolest thing ever. Because these kids who were born after I competed in the Olympics know me from Unfiltered Waters. Some of them may not even have known some of the things I accomplished in my career, and that is fine with me. Like, I kind of love that that's the second chapter, and that people are coming up and saying, this interview was great, or I loved, so-and-so's story about XYZ. And so I really love that that's becoming more of my thing, because that is the present. That's what's happening now. It's not something that happened 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So what would you say is bringing you the most joy these days? When's the last time you felt true joy?
I would say when Todd surprised me for Backstreet Boys. We just hit our 10-year wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I would say, I think just getting the mini win, like what we're building with the podcast really, really excites me. And then we're probably doing an embryo transfer in October. So really excited about it.
That's right. Yeah, he did mention you guys were going through the IVF process.
Yes.
What excites you, I guess, the most about this next transition? Because you're going to be moving into motherhood. What's going through your mind with all of that?
Yeah, that's such a packed question, because I feel like I've had so many people you talk about the expectations, so many people tell me what's going to happen and how I'm going to manage things, and I really hate being told those things. I'm like, yes, but I'm me. And I have so many people in my life, like mentors, that I have seen absolutely crush at balancing all of it.
Right.
And I think for me, that was always the struggle when I thought about being a mom. I felt for a long time, I was like, well, does that mean that I'm sacrificing my identity for other things I'm ambitious about? And what I realized of Sarah Blakely, for example, ran a multi-billion-dollar company with 4 children, is the best mom ever, and still does it all. And I think it's more just about prioritizing things, balancing things, using your resources, using your family as support, for help. And so now I feel like I'm in a very exciting place where I look at these women for the challenge. I'm excited to be the best version of myself for my children, to be that example. I'm sure there's things that I have no idea what it'll feel like, and that's just like everything else in my life. Like, I'll have to pivot and accept the challenge in the moment, but I'm ready to be a mom, and I'm ready to kind of accept that next challenge and kind of enter that next chapter.
No, and I'm sure you've received a lot of feedback too. That's always a really tough story to share. I've had a few friends that have gone through the IVF process or egg freezing process, and some of them, thought they would never get to that point. My path was going to be this. I'm going to marry this person. I'm going to have these kids, and then they get to their mid-30s and they're kind of like, I didn't hit any of those milestones. I guess I'm going to do it on my own now, and like the vulnerability that it takes to reconcile that. And then I have other friends that had, just like you said, where they've got a happy family. It turned out all right. They were worried that they couldn't balance it all. And yet they're like, you know what? It is what it is. And none of the lessons other people told me were exactly how it went at all. But I'll be totally fine. And so will you, if you ever, decide to go that way. So I know that it's an amazing thing to take on. And I'm sure it'll feel like an honor to become a mom with Todd, and you guys are going to be great. And I know that that'll be such a cool journey for you. And I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
I don't even know you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. A little baby swimmer who's also sleeping and wearing the nose strips and stuff.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I feel like, we waited a really long time. Obviously, we just hit 10 years, and I'm so glad that we did. We've moved like 8 times in 10 years. We've been all over the place. We've had, different pivots and different stop starts with careers. And so I know there's no perfect time to have a family, but I feel like it's the first time that we both feel in a place where we feel confident we can be the best versions of ourselves, not pass on all our bad patterns to our, just show up as the best versions of ourselves. And so I think that's what makes me the most joyful, is feeling that genuine energy I'm not faking that. Like, that's what I feel.
No, and that's good. And that's really smart too. I know sometimes people rush into those decisions, or they think doing it, or it happens and they don't mean to, or they do it because they think it's going to solve a problem. And that's a lot of pressure to put on an unborn child. Like, you're going to fix this for us. And that's not how you want to bring the child into the world, right? Like, you want it to be a happy, joyous place. And so it makes sense that you took your time to prepare and get there. And you guys, did you get married pretty young, right? Like you said, you were engaged.
Yeah, I was 25, he was 26. Yeah, so not, I guess, like relatively young, but not super young. But I felt like at that point we had both already lived like a full life.
It's probably, with everything you had been through,
Yeah, so I feel like, again, it was like, I guess, kind of young, but it all kind of happened. Like, I feel like we kind of like trauma bonded because we were both in like a really tough time in our lives, and it just, I mean, we moved in together 3 months into dating.
Yes, yeah, but Todd was explaining it like, he's like, I met her and I just knew.
Yeah.
It's just like, I knew that if I looked at her, I'd be like, she's gonna be there. She'd be a ride or die kind of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't feel afraid of that kind of decision.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, because I think that's the whole thing when people are like, oh, when you know, like, situation.
It's hard to describe too. And we have so many friends now where I'm looking at them and I'm like, marry this girl or marry that guy. And they're like, yeah, but what? And I feel like this is the dating apps, which I sound so old.
I stopped using them. When I moved back to Nashville, I was kind of like, this will be great. This will go so well. Like, I'm in a brand new town. Nobody knows me. I can start completely over. And so many of those crashed and burned even before they ever got started.
Yeah, I just feel like there's so many options and people aren't just following their gut of, no, this person's awesome.
Yeah.
They're awesome. So why are you going to look, why are you going to look elsewhere if you know they're awesome? And I think that's what he and I were able to do. We're like, there wasn't even a thought of there could be something better. It was just, we click, we're the yin and yang for each other. So let's do this thing. Like, it wasn't even I think our first fight, it wasn't like, oh, we might break up. It was like, how do we work through this? And I always say to people, that's the mindset shift. If that's your thought, then you're going to marry that person.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's a very healthy thing too, especially if you two were going through so much in the very beginning together.
Right.
The fact that that was your answer immediately, that for me is where it should click, right?
Yeah.
Because you're with an emotionally intelligent person.
Yes.
Even if they don't know how to navigate what's going on right now in this moment, they're at least self-aware enough to go, I want to work on it. How do I do that?
Yeah. That's the difference.
Amazing difference, and hard to find. Oh my gosh. What would you say maybe then, you just hit your 10-year anniversary, looking back over the last 10 years, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned about marriage, or what's your takeaway from the first 10?
Man, I think just the trust and the belief that no matter what, in the ebbs and the flows of, one person's going to be up towards the pack, one's going to be towards the back, and that's going to alternate, and the trust and belief that that person's going to bring you back up, and you're not a burden, you're not a burden on that person. I think that Todd and I have really struggled with that of, like I said in the beginning, like, one person's having a downtime, one person's having an uptime. And to me, the beauty of marriage is you're a partnership and you're a team. And so you always have each other's back. And I think we've always had that belief from literally day one. And I think that always, even in the times when maybe we're frustrated with each other or one person's going through it, it's just this belief that we know, like, we've got each other.
Yeah. No, and that's good. And you should cherish that, of course. And I'm glad that you guys share that as well a bit more, like, on your socials, so people can see that, like, you are supposed to be having fun. Like, you guys posted a video the other day where you're both trying to do, like, it looked like the newlywed kind of game.
Oh, yes.
Asking each other the questions, and, like, he would get some wrong or you might get one wrong, and you're like, how did you not know? And, like, we've been together for so long, but you're laughing through the whole thing. You're not, like, storming off or being like, I can't believe you didn't do whatever. It's kind of like, no, like, you're supposed to change throughout. Like, maybe you change your mind on that answer. I don't know, right? Like, but it was clear that you guys you're silly, but you're happy, and, like, you're very flexible together, and that's cool to see.
Yeah.
It's something to, I don't know about if you hate the hashtag, like, relationship goals people, but it makes me think of, like, I hope someday that I can find something like that where I can be just as silly and be accepted for exactly who you are.
Yeah, I think that's the right, it's accepted, it's seen, and I think we're both very, I don't say hard on each other, we're very honest with each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that also is, so like when Todd says he's proud of me or Todd gives me feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, I know it's the honest truth. So like when we give each other compliments, it goes to the ends of the earth happiness because we're so honest with each other and, we're going to hold each other accountable. And so, yeah, I'm definitely grateful. Even though there's always ups and downs, I'm always grateful.
No, well, that's awesome. And where are you guys going next? If you work on Synergy Dryland together, what are your big plans for the rest? You've got 6 months out of this year. What are you guys working on together?
Yeah, oh my gosh. We have a trip this week just to support friends at Masters CrossFit and then a charity event. And then, I mean, we have like 17 trips in September. So some for Synergy, some for Dream, some for the podcast, some for speaking engagements. So I think that's what we love about our life is there's not just one thing, and we can pour into lots of different things, and we kind of have created the infrastructure to allow us to do that. And so it keeps things fun and interesting and exciting. And yeah.
Are you also a co-founder of Dream?
No. Podcast, I am more synergy focused, and Dream's all him.
Yeah. No, it's a cool company. He's telling me he's got all kinds of new stuff coming out this year.
It's
So
really
I'm
exciting.
excited to see it. Yeah. Well, that'll be so good. Let's see. So I have like 5 core questions that I usually ask all the guests
Perfect.
kind of at the end.
Yeah.
So we'll just rapid fire those and see where it takes us. What do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
Geez. Is that rapid fire? My goodness. I think I just want, like what anyone wants, a great support system, to be loved, to be kind, to be fulfilled and passionate about what I'm doing. Have I found that? I think I've found some of that. I don't think I've fully found kind of my burn a fire as bright as I want it to, but I think I'm doing the things to get there eventually.
You're going to find it. For how ambitious and driven you are, it sounds like it's whatever it is going to be really, really cool.
Thank you.
So I'm excited to see it. How do you define purpose, and what does living in your purpose look like to you?
I think purpose is feeling like you're internally and externally doing what you've been put on this planet to do. And I think the times where people are depressed or have anxiety is when those conflict. And so I feel like, after swimming, I had the biggest purpose on the planet, not only to leave a legacy for younger athletes, but also to feel passionate and to feel proud of myself. I really struggled to be genuinely proud of myself. And so I think when swimming ended, I had no idea what my purpose was, 0 clue. And so now I think a lot of my purpose with the podcast is to, again, bring everything back full circle, share my experiences. But a lot of times, I don't know if I fully found my purpose because I'm always asking myself, like, well, is that enough? Is that, am I doing enough to feel proud of it? Is it worthy of being proud of it? And so those, I think, are what I'm still grappling with right now.
How do you define success, and what does success look like in your life right now?
For the longest time, success was being the best in the world at something, being extraordinary. And when I left the sport, I remember sitting there talking to a therapist, and she was like, what is extraordinary to you? And it's like, well, it's being like special, it's being the best at something. And if I'm not extraordinary, I'm not happy. And she was like, that's a lot of pressure.
It's an explosion.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. No wonder you're feeling depressed. And now I think it's more about feeling pride in what I'm doing. And I think what I've shifted it to now, because I actually think that being proud of yourself for me is a lot of pressure. Like I feel a lot of pressure because to me, to feel proud, it's like I still feel like I have to do something really extraordinary. So I've shifted it to pleased. So I'm pleased with that podcast. I'm pleased with, that speech. I'm pleased with my interaction with that person. And so it kind of takes the pressure off of proud. And so at least now that's what I've shifted to when it comes to like big words like purpose and proud and legacy. I take those words and I'm like, best in the world, like massive, huge, And so I have to kind of like dumb it down for myself a little bit and be like, pleased.
I'm envisioning like your own word cloud right now and like Olympic champions like right in the middle and best in class.
Yes.
It's really big. And then you have
Yep.
all the other positives that are floating around right inside of it. Like,
Correct.
there are other words to describe this thing.
Yes.
And I am more than just this one
Yep.
level of success. I can be successful in lots of places. Yeah, I love that. If you could go back in time and talk to the Katie that had finally walked away from swimming and was starting to pivot into, lack of a better term, the normal world, what would you say to her? What advice would you give to that version of you?
I think more just reassurance of it'll be okay. Like put one foot in front of the other, keep pivoting, keep trusting your gut, and just that affirmation, again back to that word affirmation, but like, hey, you're doing the right thing, trust it. Because for the longest time I just felt like I was kind of falling over myself and like not picking the right thing. But every single thing I look back to, even if it was like maybe it felt like the wrong decision in the moment, I can look back and go, well, it gave me that skill, it gave me that quality, it gave me that relationship. And so it all plays out how it's meant to be. But in the beginning of that journey, it's really hard to trust that.
Yeah, you don't want to believe that because that feels like you're abandoning yourself. And that's, yeah, self-abandonment's been like one of the hardest things I feel like I've dealt with on this show in particular, just being like, I don't ever want to feel that again because I already did it once. I don't want to do it again. So how do I make sure I set myself up to like pivot in a way that doesn't leave behind or depreciate what I had already been through, right? I can carry that with me, but I don't have to completely let go of who I was to be wrapped up in this other thing.
Right. I mean, but I feel like the times when you feel like that again, like the dark rock bottoms, is also probably some of the skill sets that you developed from that are serving you today. So it's like such a tough thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Well, you kind of mentioned this earlier, like appreciating the good and the bad and the ugly parts of yourself. Like all of that got you to exactly where you are now.
Yeah.
But the mistakes you may have made, the failures you may have had, it taught you something or it gave you something out of that to get to where you are today. So that's still important part of your story, your journey, your trajectory,
Yeah.
no matter what direction it actually took.
Well, the best piece of advice that someone gave me to kind of truly embrace like every piece of yourself is like every positive quality has a dark side. Like wanting to be driven makes you so that your mind never rests and you're constant, right? But like, so would you give up that? Would you you know what I mean? So it's kind of like allows you to be like, yeah, like, okay, well, this is the dark side of that quality, but I would never want to give up being driven for that. So it makes you appreciate both because you can't have one without the other.
No, you're right. The yin and the yang part. Yeah. No, that's a good one. For any of the athletes who might be listening or other listeners who are kind of holding on to themselves, just trying to keep it together, but they're approaching their retirement and that moment's coming up, what advice would you give to them as they're about to start their transition?
I think understanding that vulnerability is a superpower and you can't do it alone. Ask for help. It's not weak. I know that's like ask for help is not weak is a very cliche sentence, but I don't think that people genuinely feel like it's okay. I think especially as an athlete, you're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be strong. Great, but you were coached for how many years? You never did it alone. So why would you think that you could do this insanely hard transition alone? And I think it also just makes you feel like you have this safety net under you. So you're not feel like you're free falling. And that's like the most terrifying feeling ever. And so have people around you that can catch your fall and you'll be okay.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, Katie, please let everybody know how can they interact with you and engage with you, read your book, where can they find all of your stuff, or if they want to keep up with your podcast, things like that.
Yes. Instagram is just KT Hoff 7. 7 is my lucky number, lane 7, Olympic team in 2004. And then my website's kthoff.com, which is where you can buy my book. And then Unfiltered Waters podcast is on Instagram as well as Spotify, Apple, YouTube. So subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, and 5 stars and rate her show as well. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun.
Yeah,
I've had such a great time chatting with you, and I've learned a lot, and I feel like I've learned a lot about what else I still need to work on too, which is
dang it, I gotta go back to therapy.
I know. It's good. It's a really good reminder, and I appreciate that because again, kind of like what you said, you're forcing yourself to be honest and vulnerable teaches you how much more. It's a good reminder, like how far I've come, how far I still need to go, but there's an opportunity for growth there, and that's a good thing. So I appreciate it, and I'm going to embrace it. But all right, everybody, that's a wrap for our episode this week. You know how to find us. Everything about Katie will be added to the show notes and the description box. I will put all of her links there so you can find her shows, her book, and her website if you want to reach out to her. And everything I have is under Podcast for the Lost. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And remember, we'll catch you next week. Wanderers are always welcome.